Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
For the first time in 727 days, the Kansas City Chiefs are not the defending Super Bowl champions. The Philadelphia Eagles dog walks them on Sunday night. So what does this mean for Patrick Mahomes and that dynasty word? And Kellen Moore is set to begin a new era in New Orleans. He'll get to bring a Super Bowl ring with him to his new house, which I guess could be in the neighborhood where he is right now.
I'm Peter Bukowski, starting your day with the can't-miss stories and biggest debates in sports. You're Locked On Sports Today.
Searching all major sports. Found.
Let's start with the biggest story.
Sunday night must have been a bad night to be a streetlight in the city of Philadelphia. The Eagles take down the Kansas City Chiefs 40-22. They turn the light off on the Kansas City Chiefs. Louis DiBiase from Locked On Eagles joins me now. Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. You could have predicted this, but not in this fashion. How did this get so out of hand so fast?
It's unbelievable that Howie Roseman constructed, I think, one of the greatest rosters in Eagles history. And to beat a team that was on the verge of history, winning a three-peat in the fashion they did by putting up over 40 points, holding the Chiefs to only 6 points heading into the fourth quarter. It's unbelievable. And of course, Jalen Hurts deserves so much credit, Nick Sirianni. But to me, Peter, to watch Howie Roseman completely rebuild this defense over the offseason, to completely take away one of the greatest offenses of all time with one of the greatest play callers and quarterbacks in NFL history, and all three levels dominating like this, I think you got to hand Howie Roseman a gold jacket at this point. I think if anybody had the biggest boost to their legacy, it's the Eagles general manager after this win.
I said during the game, I think Howie Roseman should be the MVP. Like Jalen Hurts, all due respect to him and the game that he had. But I felt like this was we built the best team in the league kind of game for the Eagles. And how often, Louis, do we see the team that has the best team doesn't win this game? Like it seems like most years that's the case.
No, absolutely. I think most years the best quarterback and head coach win it. That's why Kansas City has won time after time. But this roster was just
won so many times too.
Exactly. But this roster was so just there's no holes in the team on both sides of the ball, and Howie Roseman has just learned from his mistakes time after time. And when you look at how bad the defense was last year to where they are now, where the defensive line dominated Kansas City, kind of like Tampa Bay did back in 2020, and they're forcing turnovers in the secondary at linebacker. It's just, I've never seen a general manager hit this much in one offseason. I think that's honestly the biggest story of the year.
And so much of the defense is, to your point, young players. It's Cooper DeJean who gets the pick six, rookie. It's Quinyon Mitchell, rookie. It's Jalen Carter, who's on his rookie deal. I mean, now there's going to be some attrition, right? Milton Williams is a free agent. Josh Sweat is a free agent. They're going to have some decisions to make this offseason. But this is not like they brought in some mercenary guys. This is all guys that really Howie Roseman either drafted and developed or found off the scrap heap in the case of someone like Zach Bond, who also gets an interception in this game and who was an all-pro for them this year.
Yeah, and that's the one key difference between this Eagles core versus 2017, the last time they won a championship. And by the way, beat another all-time great dynasty with Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. Right. Howie Roseman is the only consistent factor, really, of those two wins. This time it's with the youngest starting defense in football. And that's what's even more impressive about this dominating performance on defense is for Vic Fangio, who deserves a lot of credit, and Howie Roseman to get the youngest defense in the league to perform at this level. Yeah, they're not going anywhere. And Josh Sweat, Milton Williams had 4 sacks combined today. They'll probably cash in free agency, but they have built all three levels so deep and with long-term rookie contracts that this feels like a much longer extended window than it did in 2017. And that's exciting because I'm not going to say the D word yet, dynasty, but that's something the Eagles could be looking at here if this roster stays intact.
Well, and doesn't it change the way you look at what happened in 2022 when they were this close with Jalen Hurts? You bring in A.J. Brown, but that, to your point, like 17, that was a lot of older players. You catch lightning in the bottle with Nick Foles. Now, all of a sudden, you win this one. They have to be considered the favorites heading into next season in the NFC too. Their window feels open right now in the NFC.
No, absolutely. And if they would have won the championship off the backs of Saquon Barkley, and he's the reason they win the NFC Championship and the Super Bowl. And Jalen Hurts looks kind of shaky or just like a game manager in the playoffs. Then the window, you can have a real back and forth conversation about that. But the way Jalen played in the two biggest games of the year, the way the Chiefs were daring him to win the game, passing the ball, they did a great job taking Saquon out of this game. For Jalen to pull off the performance he did, nearly flawless outside of the one interception. That's also why you feel like this window is wide open, because Jalen Hurts is only 26 years old, and it feels like he's just getting better every single year. So that was a mic drop performance from QB1.
And I think that is, you mentioned Howie Roseman, legacy game for him. This feels like a legacy game for Jalen Hurts as well. Look, I have been on my show and on our shows when we've done our crossovers talking about how, look, I want to see it. I want you to show me. Well, this was a show me game from Jalen Hurts. Like what I think you too, right? To a certain degree. And so, like this is what there's nothing else you can really say. He's proven you can win a title with him at quarterback because they just did it.
He has outplayed maybe the second best player in NFL history in 2 of the last 3 Super Bowls, and he does it on the ground. Today he did it through the air. So many money, third down situations he converted with his arm or with his legs. Yeah, Peter, I hope they don't go back to my 2020 and 2021 podcast, because it's going to make me look really bad. But I've never been more happy to eat crow in my entire life. It's so cool to see him. He came up so short, or just short, so many times in college in the national championship in 2017, getting benched for Tua, losing in the college playoff, losing to Pat Mahomes. He's been knocking on the door, and I think it's such a cool story to see him finally break that down. And yeah, the critics, I don't know what they can say anymore. He's a champion and a Super Bowl MVP.
You can stay up to date on the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles all year by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Eagles on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. You're Locked On Sports Today. Coming up, where do the Chiefs go from here? Before we answer that, the Aaron Rodgers era in New York is set to come to an end. What a shock. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on all the action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip or want to go bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting features because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch 3, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. And I'm looking at tonight's matchup between the Bucks and the Warriors. Everything looking good in Golden State, and FanDuel likes them on the road. The Warriors favored by 6 over the Bucks without Giannis. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Jets will be moving on from Aaron Rodgers, according to a report. As Locked On Jets host John Butchko sees it, the new regime in charge of the Jets passed its first test.
But my first takeaway is looking to the future, and it's a positive one. Jets have a new regime in place, Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji, and this was their first real major decision. I know they signed a fullback a couple of days ago, but the dealing with Aaron Rodgers and how they handled it was the first real test of this new regime. And I think they passed it with flying colors. And part of this is I think about the last couple of years, the way the Jets have been run. And I think about how many times there's been an obvious decision in front of the Jets that they've failed to make. And not only have they failed to make it, they've done the exact opposite and then sold it as a logical move. Not firing Nathaniel Hackett last year. Firing Hackett was the most obvious move. He was clearly in over his head as offensive coordinator. He was bringing nothing to the table, even if he was a close friend and confidant of Aaron Rodgers. Moving on from him after 2023, a slam dunk move. Jets failed to make it, and the Jets essentially sold bringing Hackett back as obvious. Well, Aaron Rodgers wants him back, and Rodgers will fix everything. I think about the Devontae Adams trade. The Jets were 2-4 at the time. They looked nothing like a Super Bowl contender. It was obvious you don't throw bad money after good. It was obvious this all-in thing really wasn't working. And more importantly, it was obvious that Devontae Adams was not the only thing standing between the Jets and the Super Bowl. Jets made the deal. And not only did they make the deal, they said, well, now we're all in. Now we're going to win the Super Bowl. It just made no sense. I think about even smaller things, like how many times the Jets have failed to get their first round pick into training camp over like really, really minor issues, whether it's the timing of a bonus a player is going to get anyway, or offsets. You know, if the player gets cut, do the Jets still have to pay his salary, a small salary? And they 4 times in a 9-year stretch, the Jets failed to get their first round pick into training camp on time. This is a team that has struggled for a lot of reasons. But it comes down to the most basic elements where the Jets have failed to do the basic things right.
In NBA news, stop me if you've heard this one before. Joel Embiid may need surgery, this time on his knee. The Sixers star big man acknowledged that he is still playing hurt, and if it still bothers him at the end of the season, he will need to get surgery. Locked On NBA Game Night host Danny Cunningham and Swipa wonder why Embiid would wait that long.
This kind of got me thinking with where Philly's at in the standings. They're a game and a half behind Chicago for 10th. And I know that their draft pick is top 6 protected, and they're going to need lottery luck no matter where they finish to hang on to that. But if I'm Philly, if I'm Joel Embiid, I feel like it might be the time to shut it down and go ahead and get that surgery.
Look, this is one of the most unfortunate things in the NBA. And honestly, this sucks for Embiid. You know, Embiid is one of the most talented players, literally, the NBA has ever seen. And he is one of the most unique and skilled big men the league has ever seen. But throughout his career, he's had to deal with so many different kinds of injuries, and he has done his best to come back from every single one of them, including this year. And he deserves real credit for that.
It was a slow start for Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, but I'm sure millions of people watching were like me and thought, sure, we've seen this before. They've done this and they've won. And then they just didn't. They never quite got it going, couldn't get stops, and they ultimately fall 40-22. Chris Clark from Locked On Chiefs joins me now. And Chris, for a long stretch of this game, I was going, this is the worst I've ever seen Patrick Mahomes play. What wouldn't go right for this offense? I'm kind of at a loss for words trying to talk about this and make sense of it all. How are you processing this?
He didn't look great. His first interception that's 100% on him. He didn't see the guy. There's nothing you can excuse on that one. The second one, he gets hit right as he's throwing the ball. Those plays happen. His fumble, I mean, he's going for a deep ball at that point. 2 of the 3 turnovers, I think, is more on the pressure than it really was on him. So it is what it is. But, 6 sacks, and they don't even blitz once. 16 pressures, not a single blitz, and you're not going to be able to get a win when you allow that kind of pressure with no blitzing. And the Eagles had a great game plan. I honestly didn't think that it would go. I thought it would be at least a good game. I thought the Chiefs would end up winning. Obviously, that didn't happen. But I think the other thing that they're going to have to figure out, and the bigger thing that they have to address, is that they're going to have to figure out the left tackle position, because the reality is, I think if Caliendo's not playing left guard and it's Tooney, I think this is a completely different game. I'm not going to say that the Chiefs would have won, but I don't think the pressure would have been near the same as it was.
Yeah, and Mahomes was not making good decisions even when he had opportunities, was not making on-point throws when he was outside the pocket. That throw to DeAndre Hopkins at the end of the first half, DeAndre Hopkins wide open, and we're used to seeing Patrick Mahomes make that throw in stride 99 times out of 100.
Travis Kelce, at least 1 or 2 times. He looked like he was pressing, and that is not what I expected for him in this game. You have to wonder if the enormity of what it could have meant for him to win this game had anything to do with it.
I was wondering, Chris, if it was the enormity of having everything on his shoulders all year in the way that it was, where you're trying to bring Xavier Worthy along. He's a rookie, and you're kind of trying to keep Travis Kelce in the garage a little bit until you need to take him out in the playoffs. And he had to win all these games late, these games close. And by the end, it's like, what is he supposed to do? He can only do so much, and he needed to do even more. It felt like that to me.
I think that this team is They didn't play well. The reality is they just didn't play well. The defense played fantastic. I thought most of the game, I know they allowed 40 points, but when you get the turnovers that they did, stuff like that's going to happen, and it's not necessarily on the defense. Holding Saquon Barkley to less than 60 yards rushing is quite the feat.
I told you that before the game. You just said the Chiefs won by 10, right?
Right. And Chris Jones missed, I think, probably the third and fourth, a lot of the third and fourth quarter. Obviously, the game was pretty much out of hand at that point. But I think the defense played better than I was really thinking that they would against Barkley. I thought that he was going to go off for maybe 70, 80, 90 yards and maybe even go over 100. I didn't expect him to have a huge game where he go off for 170, but I did think that he could go over 100. But the defense had a good plan for that. And then couldn't get anything done. They got the turnover early, and I thought maybe that was going to be the changing of the tide. But the reality is Kansas City's offense couldn't do anything. I tracked third down specifically, and they didn't get a first down on third down, I don't think, until the fourth quarter.
Yikes. That's it. It is one of the more puzzling big game performances from an all-time great in a spot like this that I can remember from someone who's already done it, right? Like not someone we're expecting to do it or waiting for Lamar Jackson to do it in those moments or waiting in Jalen Hurts. We've seen do it. How does a game like this change? You go from being able to make history in the Super Bowl era. No team had won 3 in a row. The Packers had done it in the pre-Super Bowl era and then into the Super Bowl era. But now you have the 2 losses in there and they're bad losses. How does that change the way that we think about this team where we're throwing around the word dynasty in all of this?
I mean, they still made it to 3 straight Super Bowls. They've been to 5 Super Bowls in 6 years.
All the AFC championship games.
Yeah, all the AFC championship games. Patrick Mahomes hasn't been to any. Hasn't had a season where he started and not been to the AFC Championship game. Still 5 Super Bowls before he turned 30. I mean, say what you want. I still think it's a dynasty. Maybe it's not the dynasty that you want, and maybe you want to win more Super Bowls. But at the same time, 3 and 5 is not horrible. And we'll see what.
Not horrible.
Yeah, we will see what continues to happen over the next couple of years. They're obviously going to have to do some rebuilding. We'll see who's going to be back next year. They have a lot of free agents that they've got to get figured out. And there's rumors that somebody's going to be retiring. We'll see. I don't know on that one.
Okay, so if you could just say, hey, if the one thing that I would like to see them add to get back to this place and feel better about their chances to win, is it that left tackle spot or somewhere else?
No, it's left tackle. It's absolutely left tackle. You have to go address that position. You have to go spend money on it. You tried to draft somebody, and maybe you think that Kingsley Suamataia could do something for you. I don't think that they can go that direction after basically staying away from him the entire rest of the season. But you have other issues. I mean, you have Joe Thuney's worth has a $26 million cap hit in 2025. Yeah. There's no way he can play on that. Trey Smith is a free agent. Jawan Taylor is making $20 million a year, and you can't get out of that for this year. So, I mean, you're stuck with where you are on your offensive line. Do you extend Thuney? Do you try to extend Trey Smith? What do you do? How do you take care of the left tackle position? I mean, maybe Suamataia can be a guy that can move inside and be a better guard than he was at tackle. We'll see, but they have a lot of questions that they got to get figured out, and they still have pieces on the offensive line. But I do think the one thing, if there's a positive, you finally saw Mahomes connect with Worthy. Yeah. You finally saw it. He took a shot. He hit him in stride. It was a gorgeous touchdown. Worthy went off for 155 yards in the Super Bowl as a rookie. They're going to get Rashee Rice back next year. We'll see who else they have on their offense. But obviously, big letdown for the Chiefs. They get sacked on their try for a three-peat.
You can stay up to date on the Kansas City Chiefs all year long by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Chiefs on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Kellen Moore is ready to reset the Saints. The New Orleans Saints possibly hiring Kellen Moore is one of the worst kept secrets in the NFL right now. Locked On Saints host Ross Jackson is excited about what Moore brings to the table.
What is it that he brings? That you're going to hear a lot of people talk about his smarts. You're going to hear him talk about his brain, being an offensive genius and all of this stuff. I think that's what Rashid Shaheed referred to him as was a genius. You've heard him talked about as being brilliant and all these other things. I genuinely actually think that the best quality that I've seen from talking to Kellen Moore, and I have over 100 minutes of video and audio of me staring Kellen Moore in the face and everything and kind of following him around all through Super Bowl week. I think that one of the best qualities that he probably has is actually adaptability. I've talked about this on the show before, that the Saints struggled to do that. They kind of had one punch, right? The outside zone run, the wide zone run. When that worked, the offense cooked. When it didn't, there was no counter punch, and then they were injured, all these other things. But when it comes down to what Kellen Moore brings, it's adaptability. How do you change based upon what your personnel does well? How do you change based upon what an opposing defense is defending well? Something we didn't see the New Orleans Saints do often. They kind of were steadfast, stubborn in their approach, right? We're going to do what it is that we do best. We're not worried about what it is that they do. That's certainly a mentality that you can have. That's certainly a choice, but it doesn't have to be the mentality. It doesn't have to be the choice. So I really liked speaking with Kellen Moore and hearing Kellen Moore speak about, the game plan's a little bit different every week, depending upon what you're looking at over on the other side. Now, some of the, hey, we just do what it is that we do, we're not worried about what it is that the defense is doing or what the opposing side is doing, could just be coach speak, right? Not wanting to give up too much when it comes to the game plan and everything. But certainly you're already hearing a lot from Kellen Moore about how he changes and adapts, trying to play to the best parts of his offense and playing and matching up against the mismatches that you can create over on the defensive side, right? The defense that's across from his. And then you'll want to see that reflected in the defensive side of the ball as well, which is going to come down to the defensive coordinator hire.
One of the things Kellen Moore now brings to the table for New Orleans is a Super Bowl ring. That seems like it would be pretty nice to be able to put that on the table and say, all right, men, I know what it's like to get to the mountaintop. I know what it takes. We just did it. I saw what is required. There's always a little extra gravitas you can bring to that moment. Now, you still have to be able to show them. That's only going to last a year, maybe two. After that, it's going to be, well, Vic Fangio, Howie Roseman, you didn't bring them. You got to get results. It's one thing to say, I did this. It's another thing to show the players why it matters. And finally, Hall of Famer Randy Moss made an emotional return to ESPN's coverage of Super Bowl 59 on Sunday, 2 months after he took a leave from his job to get treatment for cancer. Moss said, guys, it's been hard, but I got a lot of love and a lot of people believing in me. I'm happy to be here. Even as someone who had a tortured Packers experience watching Randy Moss play football, he's one of the all-time greats. And on a personal level, I am so glad to see him back out there. He's also really good on TV. So I'm glad on that level too. We're rooting for you, Randy. If you're catching this episode after hearing your favorite Locked On show, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. Also, if you're a new subscriber to Locked On Sports Today, we're here for you with the biggest stories in sports every day. Coming up, so who are you the most excited about in the NBA this year? So at least until tomorrow, stay locked on sports today.
Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
Go to our video on demand. Click on sports at the top of your screen. There, you'll find past episodes of Locked On Sports Today, plus other Locked On shows on demand.